Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast, presented by Cannonball Books, the kids' fiction imprint of Cannon Press.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Episode 126. There's the clap, so I needed to clap with authority.
Yeah.
Episode 126 of the Stories Are Soul Food podcast.
This is going to be our best episode ever.
Wow.
Each one is the new high water mark. We're like a rising tide that never stops until it's swallowed the world.
Yes, that's our
Not
mission
really.
statement.
Not really.
We've had many ebbs within.
Never. All 126 episodes have progressively improved on the previous.
Actually, I just received feedback from one of our listeners that he'd listened to all 125 and only 3 of them had he not finished. So I think...
Well, he obviously needs to try harder.
Well, it depends on which ones those were.
Is it possible that we're the best podcast listeners out there? We're the only ones batting 1,000.
Yeah.
We've listened to all of them.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Regrettably sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But
you guys are sacrificing for us to keep our batting
126. I can't believe we've done this.
To keep our batting average that high.
So I want to know which 3. Did he tell you?
I should ask him.
Probably the best ones.
Yeah.
There were only 3 good ones out of 126, and
you missed it.
Those are probably.
Imagine how good you'd think the podcast was if you'd listened to those 3.
If you'd listened to the 3 good ones.
Anyways,
we try to keep like an Easter egg hunt for our listeners. Only some of them are good.
Right. That's actually just accuracy.
Hunt through all of them.
Yep. Well, what fun we have today. I was hoping to just dig into a question. I don't know if you've gotten any questions lately, but my thought is more a discussion of telling stories for guys. I've been watching, especially the Twitter is the one that I've been watching. Or I guess it's not called that anymore, but we'll call it Twitter.
It's Twitter. You dumb Elon. His fascination with the letter X is strange.
And then this is stemming off of the Richmond, north of Richmond song that went. And I want to talk about how do you tell stories to this demographic of people without it curdling, souring, turning to bitterness, and turn into some nasty stuff? Or even how do you motivate people who are in that situation of Oliver Anthony? So Richmond, north of Richmond was the song that just charted at number 1 on the Billboard charts.
Right.
First one from an artist who'd never charted in any form before. So Radio West Virginia, I think, played his song and it just took off. And it's a song about how corrupt our country is and how the politicians, the greedy ones, don't care about you. The rich men north of Richmond. And something about that has caught a nerve. And, there are a bunch of reactions. Some of the most predictable being Christianity Today saying...
I don't know that was predictable. That was...
Yeah.
that was bizarre. I mean, John Wilson. So actually just say what the headline was first.
I need to look it up because it was that it doesn't help you take care of your neighbor. This song doesn't help you love your neighbor.
This song doesn't love its neighbor.
Yes, that's right.
I want to know, do songs have neighbors?
These are questions for Hannah Anderson, the author.
They were, and the editor.
Yep.
And the headline crafter.
Right.
And every human being involved in writing that and headlining it. It was a hot mess.
I need to find it.
John Wilson, who's a good friend, an old friend, one of the first editors I ever worked with, no relation, worked inside
Books and Culture.
Worked inside the CT world for a long time. And he referred to that article as, I think he said something like, Christianity Today continues and escalates its self-parody. Just so bad. Neighbors don't have songs don't have neighbors. What's going on?
Yeah.
Oliver
Anthony's viral hit doesn't love its neighbors.
Right. And here's the ridiculous thing. Have the nerve to say Oliver Anthony doesn't love his neighbors. Just, I dare you to have that nerve. To place the agency in the song, but not the songwriter and not the singer is really, really silly.
It's a pretty bad move.
It's
like a very cowardly move.
Super cowardly. Have the backbone if you think Oliver Anthony is hating his neighbors, say that. Don't say the song's doing it. Yeah. He's doing it. They're his neighbors. Now, the neighbor that's specifically targeted, I think, is the 5'3", 300-pound person using welfare
to buy
bags of fudge rounds.
Yes. One of the great little lyric right there. But yeah, that's the neighbor. And he's complaining that he and his impoverished, hardworking
if you're
neighbors,
5'3" and 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. My first thought was, there are bags of fudge rounds? I can buy a bag of fudge rounds? That's my takeaway might have been the wrong takeaway. Where can I find these bags of fudge rounds? Yeah, anyway, it's funny. And this is also, we've talked about tiers of criticism before. This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
So you go through it, and the three basic tiers, the first being technical value, like just craftsmanship, the lyrics, the execution, the song itself, just on a technical level. Then you talk about response value, like the impact it's having on listeners. And then you talk objective value. Like that's the question of just, does God like it or not?
Yep.
Yeah. How does God feel about this? People are trying to find these different places to avoid the response value. They're trying to get into his technician as a songwriter or, whatever, or the tenor of his voice.
Right.
They try to find some,
like just a guy with a guitar. It's not really impressive.
It's like, come on, it's like there's so many better songs, and they're just looking at the technical craft of it as opposed to what this thing just up and did.
The solid beauty critique, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I would say basically if you're getting all into the granular nitty gritty technical aspects of his ability as a guitarist, his ability as a songwriter. It's like, well, how do you define ability as a songwriter? Are you measuring it in terms of response again? Or are you saying in terms of the rules that I have in my head, it's not quite lyrically what I would want it to be.
Yeah.
Then you go up to objective and you're just looking at like, how does God feel about this? And that's, a lot of people park on technical as ways to bypass the response value or even the intrinsic value, God's perspective of a thing.
Yeah.
So what is he doing? How's he doing it? Why did it strike a nerve? Why did it blow up and just go?
Yeah.
I mean, this thing went. I think a big reason why it went is because it was equal opportunity descriptive. It's not like he's not getting into the question of his homelessness, the fault of the homeless person. How many people are personally culpable for that? He's talking about the cultural drive toward it, specifically beating down young men, like targeting young men, killing people with welfare, overtaxing, misusing taxes. And the whole big thing is just these rich men north of Richmond, and he describes the problem as they want total control.
Yeah. They want to own you.
That's the issue. As to like whether it can lead to bitterness, like sure, there's a lot of people who are bitter about exactly that. And there's
well, I noticed too, another jump to that response to the song really was about the few bad words that he used.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That is Christians jumping up to a Sunday school version of God, where God is basically, has the personality of their mom's unmarried sister. And, it's like,
spinster aunt personality. Yeah.
And like, that's God, what God thinks of him having used a poopy word.
Right. When he says his wages are poopy, that's unacceptable.
And again, basically, he's saying like somebody who maybe had read the book of Ezekiel at some point, where most Christians who criticize things like this have not read the book of Ezekiel.
Yeah. I think too that maybe you have a thought on this, but it just seemed so intrinsically unproduced and so very real.
Yep.
That I think it's why we like home videos. It's why
that's what Joe Rogan said, is like just this is an authenticity.
Yeah.
Resonance
that you can't fake. And it feels like the music industry has been ripping its own knees of its jeans for so long that seeing some guy singing in front of his dog.
Yep. Singing with his dog and his t-shirt in the woods.
Yep.
Just kind of
Yeah.
It really worked. But the reactions in different communities have been amazing too, because urban communities, Black podcasters, Black influencers have been incredibly hit by this because they feel seen. They feel like whoa, like this is,
he gets it.
Yeah, he sees this. And this is something I've told my various friends. I know I'm trying to remember the last time I had this conversation with Jason Petty with Propaganda, but one of the things I told him was that the day that the far right and the pressure cooked inner city designated left, but not necessarily left, but they're designated to the left. They belong to the left politically as a demographic. The day they realize they're on the same side is going to be bad news for the establishment. It is really, really important for the government to keep them, widely apart and not allied.
Yeah. Did you see Tucker's interview with Ice Cube? I watched a little bit of that, but watching Ice Cube treated his whole life as a liberal, talking about how he'd been not allowed on anyone's show. Oprah had taken him off. The View didn't want him. A bunch of other stuff. And then he's like, Tucker had me on, the most far right versus inner city, just like you're talking about.
And so there's an alliance to be had there. There's a mistrust of government that's well earned in the inner city. I mean, well earned. And in the far right, where we live, the rural right.
Yeah.
Not the suburban right. That's actually like we have very little in common with the suburban right. Like the comfortable right. We have we have very expensive public schools. We have really the expensive public schools, the shiny lobbies.
Mitt
and everything
Romney
else.
talking about how much he loves hot dogs. Like that guy, that's the right where he's just a fake, and we hate that. We're like, you don't even know a hot dog. Dude.
So if you go there are places in Napa Valley and Texas that have absurdly expensive, gorgeous public high schools.
Yeah,
like just $100 million campus. It's just crazy, and all the people who live there are shareholders in it. Their property taxes pay it, and they don't pay tuition for their kids because they have taken control of this government apparatus for their own use. Now, if I dropped into those places, I would find a high percentage of red right voters, but they're people utilizing government infrastructure for their own gain and benefit. And when you get out into the rural West, man, like. The schools are rough. The schools are poor.
Yeah.
It's brutally difficult. And then you add a complete lack of government infrastructure in so many ways. And the only thing you really have coming to you is farm subsidies, which are terrible in the long run. They're terrible for farmers. They end up growing the wrong stuff, and the foods we have, it's just these weird incentives and disincentives. And so that's kind of behind why corn syrup is in everything because we grow too much corn because there's federal subsidies for it. And so we have this massive, massive surplus of this stuff we got to figure out how to use. So whenever the government's doing that, it just kind of messes things up. But the rural West, the Clive and Bundys of the world and Ice Cube have a ton in common.
Right.
And that is a very dangerous thing for them to find out. And so the Ice Cubes have to continue to believe that, the rural right are a bunch of racists when they are not. Now, is the media converting them to racism? Unfortunately, yeah. I've seen more racism cropping up in the last couple of years than I've seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
Because they're being called racists. They're being insulted. These dirt poor people, in West Virginia and, out in the fields of Idaho and Montana are being told they're privileged. They're being told they're entitled. They're being called racists. At some point,
they stop caring.
They believe you.
Whether they actually are. They're like, oh, maybe this is really racism.
Yep. And they like, so what?
Right.
Apparently I can't change it. So I guess I am. And it gets really ugly.
Right.
But the point is this song, especially, reveals that a lot of the pressure, a lot of the oppression that, that folks in the inner city, in these urban settings feel is also felt, by miners, by
in
coal
West
miners.
Virginia. Yep.
They have the same kind of, the same kind of a thing. So it's resonated across lines, I think, for that reason. And it's this glimpse of, oh, wait, we all actually are fighting the same man, like the same oppressor.
Yeah.
Of those who want total control.
I think that's too why Oliver Anthony could easily have ruined his song by making it about party lines.
Yeah.
It could have become something that like all of a sudden Ted Cruz adopts as like part of his campaign.
And I would say the rich men north of Richmond have done an amazing job co-opting the oppression of the inner city and blaming it on people like Oliver Anthony.
Yeah. And
getting the whole BLM lie to just rage at white people. It's like it's like two different oppressed classes, like really, really like rural, isolated people who have sort of escaped out into self-sufficiency, and it's a hard life and it's a poor life and everything else. People who are out there grinding and stuck in the rural traps are held down and pressure cooked and controlled and taxed by the exact same people who built the Bauhaus projects inside Baltimore and everywhere else and said, here,
Walter Gropius and co.
Here, you go in this box that's inhuman. You go here. It's the same people who decide to teach what they teach in those schools are doing it in the hills of West Virginia, and they're doing it in the inner city.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in the rural West. It's only in the suburban comfort, that you actually start to see like where the weird benefits are.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so those people fight for, fiscal responsibility and things like that. But they also teeter on LGBT and moral stuff much faster. And currently they're pushing back. But what they want is control of the government apparatus in a way that benefits them in their own area. So, when big school board meetings where people are raging, like, okay, it only just now dawned on you that this isn't yours and you don't control it.
Right. Yeah, that's very telling, because the question of why did it take so long is something that's in all of our minds. In the rural area, although I'm not an oppressed member of the rural class, but
sure.
But it is.
No, you are though. And the thing is, I get that. I understand, like why you wouldn't say that, because we don't want to identify as oppressed, and we don't. We don't want to be but the fact is, what happens if you don't pay your property taxes?
Well,
which are arbitrarily set by an unelected person who just
right. I'm going to go to jail.
No, you lose it all. They take it all.
Yeah.
They'll take all your land. They'll take your house over, a tiny bill, and they'll just take the whole thing.
Mm.
If you improve your property, they punish you.
Yeah.
So like I take bare land, I then take my money and I build a house on it. Well, you just made that worth more. So now you owe us $9,000 a year.
Sure. Yep.
$10,000 a year. And if you don't pay us that, we're going to go prove to you who the real owner is.
Right. And you're saying that affects poor people far more than it does the very wealthy people who do that, who apply to those same rules? Or do you think the rural land is the only thing targeted by those property taxes?
I think,
or you're just giving an example.
It hits the middle class everywhere.
Yeah.
And now the thing that happens, and I don't like, there's plenty of people in the suburbs who are under the same pressure, but the thing that happens when they then have control of where that money goes and they get to steer it into computer labs and things for their kids, it's like that's a different kind of a relationship to the taxation than we have.
So in our county, I remember it was less than half now you go to public schools,
right?
But 100% of them are paying for the public schools.
Yep. And then you also have a school district that wastes more money than any other school district in the state. And the cost per student of this government school system because they won't scale down teachers. They won't scale down operations.
Yeah.
Just the per student cost goes up and up and up. Well, everyone chooses alternatives, but has to keep paying, and then we'll lose their house. We'll lose their land. So when a little old lady on a fixed income, that income being fixed by the Richmond, north of Richmond, and Social Security, then has the value of her property arbitrarily increased, and she has to pay more and more and more, or they just take it, and it prevents the transfer of land across generations. Things have to be sold, it's all this kind of stuff. Like that's the entire goal for the structure, is to prevent generational accumulation of wealth. It's to prevent people from building something that they can just easily hand off.
Break that down. I guess that makes sense, right? Because don't they have insane laws about splitting your own property out here? It's like 25 years.
Yeah.
If you want to build another house on your property.
30, I think.
So that's insane, where you think, if I bought land and then wanted my son or one of my sons to be able to live with me, but he couldn't buy his own land.
Yeah.
That makes sense to be able to split your land and build on it. But that's not allowed.
Right. And so you have to go ask special permission. You have to wait 30 years. You've got all these different, different things that you have to do. So all this to say, we don't feel especially oppressed because the personality of the West is self-reliance and build it and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we all live in a world where we are constantly monitored. We live in a world that free speech is starting to be policed and controlled. We live in a very strange tax relationship to the Richmond, north of Richmond. I came upon some information in my various dealings. I just, hear from this guy, meet this other guy. I've got these different conversations I've been around. And I'm like, oh boy, I kind of know what's about to happen for this one company on the stock market. If I go buy a bunch of shares, they can send me to jail.
Right.
Because because I had access to something.
Mm-hmm.
If a congressman knows they're about to grant a contract,
you're not allowed to talk about this stuff. Our FBI agents are perking up here.
they can go all in. And so there
you can look that up and see how much money they've made over.
Yeah. You can, if you are in government and you are in charge of like choosing the route of the interstate, new expansion or whatever, you can look at the routes and then you can go look at which land you might be able to buy cheap yourself. And you can like buy it, but you vote for that and make that route be the one that happens. Not because it's the most efficient thing or anything else, just because there's a personal kick for you in it. Fauci won't disclose how much money he's made receiving kickbacks and percentages on patents that he used government grants to back. So this is because it's legal for him to do that. The government has very specifically protected themselves and their own ability to insider trade.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are just all the things we know. So all this to say, when Oliver Anthony shows up and he's
saying, hey, they just want to control you.
Yeah.
That touches a nerve.
Yep.
Because it's real.
I think the messiest thing he said is, I wish they would care more about minors and less about minors on an island somewhere. The thing that's funny is who's they?
Yeah.
The Richmond, north of Richmond. Here's the bad news, Oliver. They're the ones with the minors on that island.
Yeah.
It's like Epstein's Island. Look at all the people that were on Epstein's Island. They don't care about minors on an island somewhere.
Yeah.
They were involved in that. They don't care about minors in the coal mines, and they don't care about minors on that island. So that was the kind of like the weird miss, I think, of the song was he chased the wordplay, and that's, I get it. Mm-hmm. I've never done anything like that before.
Guilty.
So
guilty.
He chased the wordplay, but the Richmond, north of Richmond, are guilty of both sides of that comparison.
And asking them to fix it is just handing them yet another set of.
And jump into stories. We look at Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Yeah.
How easy would it be to be bitter about Mordor?
Really very easy. Yeah. Denethor did that. He doubled down on the.
And so the fact that like, oh no, there's a temptation to bitterness. It's like, that's called being in a story.
Right.
It's like, there's a villain, there's an enemy, there's somebody doing bad things. Like, well, you can respond by like joyfully combating that and trying to overthrow it, maybe with a song or two. Or you can like get really wound up and bitter and lash out. And that is unfortunately where stuff like this tends to end up. People tragically end up steered by exactly the oppressors that they're kicking against. And it'll be like, you know what, we need stronger unions. Like, oh really? Like, we need the Oliver Anthony song, this is now a battle cry for stronger unions or something like that. And it always goes that way. It's always like the Children's Crusade. These moments are inevitably moments where people get rallied and led, and their enemies, the first thing their enemies will do, they'll try to get to the front of the parade.
Yeah, did you see Bud Light offered him $10 million to become a new spokesman for them, and he turned him down. That's pretty funny. Good for him. But
I did not see that.
Bud Light was instantly like, "Ooh, this is our out. Dylan Mulvaney sunk us. We just get Oliver Anthony in front of this, and we're back in with all the guys that have turned on us." So it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like,
but the thing is, they don't understand. Yeah, get the front of the parade. But the thing they don't understand, about that is all that would do is destroy Oliver Anthony.
Yeah, it doesn't help. It doesn't help them.
If the first thing he did after his viral protest song is post a photo of the Bud Light can, literally everyone would turn on him overnight. He does not control the mob that he's spoken for.
Yep.
Like, so this is not a thing that he can steer or lead or, anything like that. So he would have to be out of his mind.
Yeah. I think he's turned down some giant record deals for the exact same reason. He's like, I know that me cashing in on the system that I'm making fun of is the sellout move.
Yep. And the other thing is what he just did. Now, is there anything wrong with selling to a major, doing a record deal? No, there's not.
No. Yeah. And I hope he will. I think he will.
However, the nature of streaming and everything else right now is such that he could access the consumer. He's proven he can access the consumer without them. He doesn't need that validation. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why he would take that check would be for validation of signing with a major label.
Right.
But he can just go right to the listener now. So why does he need him?
Yeah.
So,
it reminds me too, we talk Lord of the Rings a lot. This could be the Lord of the Rings podcast, but Saruman also motivated the wild men, right? Mm-hmm. With that same sort of story that Rohan was sitting in their gold houses and taken all your land and stuff.
And not wrong.
Yeah. So they'd been pushed up into the hills by the Rohan.
If you were Nez Perce, could you be bitter against the white man?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
You'd have a history of things to point to. Yeah.
It's so easy. I may have mentioned this before, but one of the things that was funny to me was reading the account of the destruction of my own Scottish clan.
Oh, wow.
Centuries ago. And reading this story of my people from Caithness, in Scotland being betrayed and slaughtered in a church, and I actually don't remember all the details now. It was like some brutal, okay. So there was some kind of parlay thing.
Which clan is this? Is this Wilson's?
Guns. Gunn.
Right,
so it was like the Keiths. There was like the son of a chieftain at the Keiths who wanted the daughter of the chieftain of the Gunns. Mm-hmm. And he was turned down. So they abducted her and raped her and locked her in a tower. And
Scotland.
It was going to be, she's going to be, I don't know if she's going to be forcibly married or whatever, but she's locked in a tower. She threw herself out of the tower and died, which then triggered, a good old fashioned Scottish blood feud, the Gunns versus the Keiths. Finally, there was a some kind of truce meeting they're supposed to have, and they pulled a full Game of Thrones situation, and the Keiths showed up and slaughtered everybody who had come to this treaty meeting. And that was sort of the end of the guns. And I remember just reading all this and reading all that and digging other stuff up and reading about it and just being like, oh my gosh, those guys are the worst. Like, I hate the Keiths. And it kind of dawned on me. I was like, man, I could see just like meeting a Keith and hating them. Like just
based on
and
that.
has nothing to do with me or like any of our narrative. Just like, hey, your people are terrible. And then it was immediately afterwards. And I wasn't trying to say that'd be right. I was just saying it's weird that I could actually relate to like old ethnic hatred. Like I can feel the tug. I can relate to this old ethnic hatred. And then realized as soon as I was thinking it'd be easy to hate a Keith, I was like, Gilbert Keith Chesterton. And went diving into it. And yeah, sure enough, his mom was a Keith and came from the Keiths. And I was like, that's funny. And it's like all that evaporates. It's like there's a different tribe, there's a different blood brotherhood. There's this thing that trumps all of it. It's like all of that stuff. And that's where
a promise of the gospel.
Yeah. And there is no solution for all the coal miners in West Virginia and all the people in the inner city in Baltimore, apart from brotherhood via, the blood bond of Christ. So if everybody like comes into the gospel, then bitterness, you can fight joyfully. You can fight without bitterness. You can really try to do your thing. Otherwise, you're always vulnerable to becoming sour, resentful, and turning on each other as well, and being really easy to divide and conquer. Which is what's happening to us currently. What's happening to the country right now is this constant sowing seeds of division. And also
another news story connected with that was the fact of that country song, Jason Aldean. Try that in a small town, right? Which is immediately co-opted into this is some sort of racist dog whistle, right? That same sort of just split. Even when you could potentially identify with.
Yeah, well, we talked about the Sound of Freedom. Like, it's right wing now to be against child trafficking. Like, what's the or to like a movie that's about a true story about a dude who rescued kids? Like, that's right wing.
Yeah, what world are we in?
Yeah, it's bizarre. The other thing I'll say here, this is the kind of thing we do, is people all the time, you listeners out there will have said this. You'll say things like, let's divide and conquer. Like, divide and conquer usually means you go do that thing, I'll go do this thing. That's the exact opposite of what it means. So,
I guess so.
The divide and conquer is an actual like strategic principle about how to handle your enemies. You want them to be divided so that you can fight them in smaller units. And you can control them in smaller units.
It's not about the division of labor.
It's not about division of labor. It's not about, hey, you're an army and you're approaching something and you say, we should divide and conquer. It's like, no, if you divide, you will be conquered. And that's that's actually how it is. So divide and conquer has come in common speech, has come to mean let's split up and get this done. It's actually used as a very strong and extremely true principle that what you do to an enemy is you divide them so that you can handle them in smaller units. And that's exactly what's happened to the population of the US. There is not a unity across demographics that sustains because they kind of re-separate and re-divide and re-attack and, keep everybody in their own smaller units where they can be controlled and defeated more easily. And that's where songs like Richmond, North of Richmond are really fun because it pulls people together from across these different units. And then you watch the hammer come down as they try to redivide and push apart.
Yeah.
So the old united we stand thing, it's like, that is correct. Divided we fall.
Right.
That's how it works. Divide and conquer means divide your enemy. Get your enemy to differentiate themselves and to fight with each other so that you can handle them in smaller units. And that's really what we see right now culturally.
What do you think, just storytelling perspective, what do you think Oliver should do next? What's the story for someone who's handed that instant spotlight and a microphone with his skill set? Like what kind of moves would you be thinking about trying to make? Because obviously he could make a career of
he needs a tour, but it's honestly I couldn't answer this without knowing what he really wants to do.
Right.
There's things he could do that would work and it would be pure hell. I mean, he could run for Senate, right?
Sure. Sure.
But what's he going to accomplish there? He should tour. He should release an album. It should be a good album.
Yeah.
It should be stripped back. It should be Dylan. It should be a real kind of raw and real thing, not a super produced and polished, thing. He should call Rick Rubin and do like old Johnny Cash Essentials style album.
Gotcha. Because that's majoring on his strengths.
Yeah.
And also something that we need.
Yep. So an album that hit a lot of different things, it's like an album actually as a piece of art by itself has kind of died, but doesn't have to have died. Where all the songs are supposed to hang together and it's one kind of thematic thing and there's different points and counterpoints and flavor changes and all that kind of stuff. He's in a moment he could do that.
Yeah.
If he reached out to Rick Rubin and said, I want what you did for Johnny Cash at the end of his life. I want to do that. Right here at the beginning of my career. He could put out a pretty fantastic album. He wants to tour because he wants to actually meet the people. So he genuinely has a thing for the people who've been listening to his song, and he wants to meet them all. So, doing some kind of strip back tour or something he won't break, he won't burn out.
Yeah. The idea of a hip hop album or rap album just focused on exposing injustice is like a staple of the genre, right? But it does feel like it's not rap or hip hop has moved away from that a bit more. Maybe it's just what's gone mainstream.
Folk music, and the thing that made Springsteen big was that it was like urban folk. But if you like Born in the USA is not a hooray USA anthem.
Yeah.
There's a love for your country and a hatred of your government.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that shows up in Oliver Anthony's stuff, in country music a lot, in the legacy of country music, folk music. And what you lose in a lot of like the angry resistance rap is you don't have the same thing.
Right.
You don't often have like love of country paired with, a hatred of the oppression. So, but you do see that in country. You see that in folk. You see that in Springsteen. You see that in different places. It shows up, and not always well. Probably rarely does it show up well. But resistance music is a thing and has been a thing for a long time.
Yeah, I think the song makes the great case that when you're trying to make an argument, if you have that repeat the chorus that you can come back to, that it helps everybody know what it is. I mean, it's just that idea, that thing that resonates and sticks in your head allows you to build something bigger out of it. It's almost like the theme in a book. But
if he did an album, you can do old spirituals, you can do folk songs, you can do things that are not originals, but are actually just in the blood of the culture. Right. Like you can do, and people would love it. People would get all the way into it. You don't have to have it be all new songs. Some of it can be old songs, like Josiah bringing the law out of the, out of the dust. It can be old songs that show back up.
Yeah. Did you listen to the Killers' Pressure Machine album, all about their kind of country, where they use clips of recordings from the, random people who...
It was the one they did during COVID, right?
I think so.
It was not very good.
Well, I don't know. I liked it. This is the one that was all about like the small town.
I think I went through it once, maybe halfway distracted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it felt like they were trying to do what you were saying, but then got weirdly Mormon for at least two of the songs. But it was that idea of hey, we love our country. Here's the people in our part of the world.
Yeah.
And then trying to sync that with the fact that a lot of wherever they are, can't remember, have been destroyed by drugs and poverty and all that. But again, I don't know how real that is coming from the Killers. You did have that question. Yeah. You had that question of, is this real or are you faking?
Is this a patina
Yeah, exactly.
that you've purchased prefabricated, or is this?
I guess they've
real?
been doing that from the beginning.
I think it's
Dustland Fairy Tale.
it's like halfway authentic, at least with them.
Yeah, that's true. Some of their big stuff, Dustland Fairy Tale, is all about that small town.
The big thing is like the takeaways for something like this is you should be glad that somebody's singing truth, that somebody's singing resistance, but at the same time, just singing resistance is not the answer. Yeah, it's like his role could be opening up doorways between different demographics, waking people up, uniting people. But the real resistance is building. The real resistance is construction. The real resistance is raising joyful kids. Like the real resistance is making sure that they're well trained and educated and love God. And I mean that will have a very, very lasting blast radius. That stuff does. See the song, appreciate the song, but don't just say, "Man, I need to be more mad."
Right.
Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. I don't need. You don't need to be more angry.
Yeah, you got to channel that.
And there's this worldly thing that will come out when people say, "Let's get mad. Let's get let's get angry together." It's a huge mistake. And one of the great things is that he's not mad. He's singing a cry for help. He's singing this honest, mournful perspective on the situation, but he's not raging. There's no anger here, and it needs to stay that way. And a lot of the people that grab this thing and try to use it as a little fight song are going to be angry, and they're going to be bitter, and it's going to be very destructive.
Yeah,
in very unhelpful ways.
We talk about red pill rage, or it's a kind of a talking point, but you watch Rollo Tomasi and some of those original red pill guys saying, "Don't get married, don't have kids, focus on yourself," because it's like they're just like things are ruined so bad. And that right there is more what I was thinking of. What you do when you don't have a path forward and you get hit with a song like that, you just think, quit,
give up, apathy. You're doomed. But the fact is, like, it was 1981 when my dad looked at the situation. It's like, we need our own infrastructures, and started building the classical Christian education movement. And then here we are looking at the fruit already of that over 4 decades.
Yep.
And what that does, and it's massive. And build,
I mean,
train, like rejoice, like have fun. Like
5th grade has been the theme of this podcast, and my son just started 5th grade.
I saw a little picture. My wife showed me a picture.
Yeah, of in my dad's class, which we both went through.
Of Brian's son entering 5th grade
under the same fawn mask that I and you sat under.
Yes. With the same 5th grade teacher. It was pretty funny. And of course, as I mentioned before, Brian was born when I was in 5th grade, taught by his father.
Perhaps the most repeated fact on the Stories of Soul Food podcast.
Now his son is in 5th grade, taught by his father.
And you best believe I've had those talks with my son.
It's pretty awesome.
You can mess up with any teacher, but not Papos.
So, yeah. So it's, anyway, it's like build, legacy. Get into a rhythm of go, fight, win, rest. Go, fight, win, rest. It's like and find the joy, like the real pleasure and the joy of that rest.
And looking for the fruit, like not expecting things to grow is something that does seem like a mindset change of we're not just striving in this way where we'll never get out of this rat race. It's more, how can you plant and get 30-fold first time, next time get 60-fold, next time 100-fold.
And incidentally, evangelicals and Christians have been terrible at this for a long time. But I don't know if Oliver Anthony has kids. I don't know if he's married. But if he does, the most important thing he can do is raise his kids to be joyful, faithful warriors.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's like,
don't quit on your own.
That's way more important than any of his listeners.
Yeah.
It's just the essential thing. So that's the eternal work. That's like big step one. Like raise joyful kids, and not afraid of the sweat, not afraid of the grind, not afraid of the work. The work is real, and the odds are wildly stacked against us. On one hand, on the other hand, we cheat.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Moses won by cheating. Egypt was destroyed.
Yeah.
And it's like cheating. It's like, well, it just means you have the omnipotent creator God on your side.
Right. Or holding the arms up.
Yeah. Yeah.
To defeat the, what was it? Amorites.
So we cheat. God wins. He always wins. God wins. And really hubristic, proud, glossy, controlling, rich tyrants never, ever, ever win. They always come crashing down, like no matter what. So I think that in this moment, I think Anthony's song resonated because there is a ton of tyranny right now. There's a ton of oppressive tyranny, and I think it's getting way up there. For at least in the history of our country, it's getting up there. And that's something that, like, okay, be joyful.
For a long time, I think everybody's been trying to do the live under your own olive tree and ignore everything going on. And it's got to the point where you can't.
Eating a feast set in the presence of your enemies is way more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just way more fun. When you're able to like sit down and be grateful and enjoy what God's given you as you rest on your way toward the next struggle, the next fight, the next thing. And I think anybody who's been struck by Anthony, who's been moved by Anthony, should be grateful for him, should be grateful for what he's doing in this moment, should be hoping it doesn't spiral into bitterness and resentment, but should know that it will for some. There's a bell curve. The people who are already bitter, like, they'll use this as an anthem for their bitterness. Hopefully it'll help people from different groups understand they're actually in the same boat. Yeah. And the fact that they keep us chained to different oars doesn't make us, doesn't mean that we have to be on separate teams. We're all right. Chained to oars.
I hope it also makes us a little more immune to when you hear this terrible fact about this other demographic, that often that's being wielded.
Yeah.
As the divide and conquer that you talked about.
Yep. Yeah. And so I referred to the Children's Crusade, which was famous, and that somebody went through the cities of Europe saying the children were going to go rescue, Palestine from the unbeliever, loaded ships up with thousands and thousands of European kids to go in this little, faithful fervor to go rescue Palestine, and instead took them to North Africa and sold them into slavery. And that's the Children's Crusade. And it's the kind of thing that happens over and over and over again. And there's real oppression. There was a slave trade. There was chattel race-based slavery in this country. The way that Sherman marched to Atlanta, scorching the earth of his neighbors, was also then immediately afterward done to the Native Americans. The exact same strategy. And right. one of the things that's quickly forgotten when we look, it's very easy right now in this political environment. It's very easy to say, man, the U.S. government mistreated the Navajo. Man, the U.S. government mistreated the Nez Perce. Man, there's these places of oppression and genocide and just scorched earth, strategy against these tribes, and breaking treaty with them. All the same thing was done to the American South. Now, we could look at the American South and say, well, this is God's judgment. They were misbehaving, and so they deserved it. And we would not be wrong to say that. But from God, but from Sherman, like, he didn't have the right to do that.
It was evil.
Yeah.
His march to the sea.
Yep. And then now, do we break treaty? Yeah. The U.S. broke treaty. Yeah. The U.S. stole property after Appomattox. Yes, they broke treaty the exact same way they broke treaty with the tribes. So does it fix anything to get mad? Does it fix anything to get angry and bitter? Like, no, the key to defeating oppression is to actually rise above it, like, get through it. And then, stomp it out, but know that God will destroy it. It will get torn down.
I think we let it spiral out of control. But if you ask yourself, what can I do about it? That's a helpful test sometimes. Because the what can I do about it? You can't take care of the DC complex.
Yep, you can't. What can you do? You can give your kids an amazing afternoon after school. you can make sure they're in a great place, learning great things. Right. What's within arm's reach? PJ O'Rourke in All the Trouble of the World. I don't remember. I think it's in there. It's a chapter title or whatever. I know he said it somewhere. Everyone wants to save the world.
Yeah, it's in there.
No one wants to do the dishes.
No one wants to help mom with the dishes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, like, the thing is, you can't save the world from where you sit. But what you can do is help your mom with the dishes. What you can do is be good weather in the lives of everyone who's around you. Like, you can do that, and it does actually have a massive impact.
Right.
And a long-term impact. God uses that enormously. And I think that's what Oliver Anthony did. Like, all his song and his approach to that song is good weather, a moment of like clouds parting. You know, it's a moment where people are seeing something clearly and appreciating and seeing, like, hearing kind of the empathy, the urgency, the understanding, in his voice and how he's singing, how intensely he means it. You know, it's like, it's good weather. He's being good weather just all over the place with that, which is fantastic. People will try to use it as bad weather, but it's not. And he's been quite a sunny personality, you know, afterward too, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, reading out all of Psalm, what was it, 34?
Yeah.
Or
37?
37, yeah. All an imprecatory psalm out on the wicked. That's in our Bible, man.
Yes. He went with some of God's word there. But he said a poo word.
Yeah.
He did.
He also used damn inappropriately. Can only be used in a context in which you're referring to hell.
Yeah, of course. It's funny. I think he's been great weather, and it's a good thing. I did enjoy you picked on Christianity Today. I thought National Review Online was hilarious as well.
Oh yeah.
Where they said maybe his next one can be about how great America is and how America is the land of opportunity.
What a bunch of putzes, man.
The thing that's funny about it is I was texting with Meg Basham about it. We were both laughing about NRO and I was like, it's kind of she said it's this amazing version of, I would like your thing if it was different than the thing you did. And it's like, you know, it's actually, I would like your thing if it was the opposite of your thing. if it was the exact opposite.
This is a very cool wave we're all riding, but if it were a different wave.
We hear your criticism of the American government, and what we would prefer is if it had been a compliment. Could you think about just issuing a compliment instead? And anyway, I thought that was profoundly hilarious.
Anyways.
Like, just very, very funny, and a moment of beauty for somebody just to say, great job. How about we do the opposite? Like, that'd be, if you did the opposite, it would be better.
Yeah.
It'd be better if it was the opposite.
Isn't their name literally the National Review?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be criticizing
they
things.
They jumped the shark a long time ago.
Buckley is very upset. Or is he? I don't know. He's a bit of an elite.
So yeah, don't get bitter. Doesn't matter how bad it gets in your life. Doesn't matter how bad it gets anywhere. You could be in chains and you can't get bitter. Don't do it.
Philippians 4:8.
Sing the blues, sing your folk songs, sing the psalms. And
the other one that I think your family taught me, the fruit is heavy, is a great reminder when you're feeling tired. Fruit is heavy.
So yeah, exactly. When you're carrying a basket of apples up a hill, it's gonna get heavy.
But the answer is not to dump it out.
No, and the only thing heavier is gold. So fruit and gold are always going to be heavy. It's never going to feel like you're carrying a helium balloon when you're carrying something really lasting.
It's a good spot to stop.
This has been SAS 126. Maybe not the best one ever, I think I got to say, but I don't know what is.
Well, it's in one of those top
The
3.
next one will be better.
If you're a SAS listener who often makes it to the end of these videos and the end of our podcast, when I start talking, you'll know that I'm often bringing up Canon Plus. So I'm going to let you, in a couple seconds, watch a video that explains why Canon Plus is the premier Christian streaming service for entertainment, education, and theology. Give it a watch, and then please come join us on Canon Plus if you haven't already.
Does your streaming content make you a better wife and mother? A better husband and father? Or, when you sit down and pick up the remote, does the content you consume attack you?
You fat bastard.
Is it at war with everything you say you stand for? Does it make you stronger? does it make your family stronger? How much darkness streams directly into your home every week? How much do you pay for the privilege of consuming whatever new dark thing Hollywood algorithms have assigned to you and to your family?
Just my two dads and me.
It doesn't have to be that way. Canon Plus is building a global platform with one simple goal: to create and deliver great content that will help Christian families grow stronger. Content to encourage, equip, challenge, and inspire. Yes, these times are bleak, but the darkness cannot win for long. Light is far more powerful. With thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, truth-telling documentaries, and curriculum for all ages, Canon Plus wants to help your family laugh, sing, learn, and grow stronger together. And we're just getting started. We want the resources we produce to help you become a lighthouse in your own community, armed with courageous joy and faith that burns bright, right alongside millions of others who are just as determined to live in a way that honors God in these dark times. Your own food shouldn't attack you. Not at the table, and not gathered with your family on the couch. We are building a true alternative, and we can't do it alone. We need committed Christian families to build with us. So consider this your invitation. Pop some corn, grab the blankets, and help us build a streaming platform unlike any other. A platform that will strengthen Christians' mind, body, and soul. We saved you a spot on the couch. Canon Plus. Cancel the darkness. Invite light.